I walked over and picked up the phone. The passcode hadn't changed. Oh, 712, his sister's birthday. I held my breath and opened the messages. And there it was. A thread with someone named Maddie mine, not Madison. Not a coworker. Just Maddie with a flower emoji. I opened the chat. My hands were shaking. There were photos. Selfies. At first, just her smiling. Then more. A photo of her wearing his hoodie. A mirror shot that looked like it was taken in a hotel room. His suitcase clearly in the background. And then the messages. Miss you already, babe. Last night was magical. You always make me feel so special. When are you going to tell her? You promised. My name is Lisa Romero. I'm 51 years old. Over the past 17 years, I have gone through a long and challenging journey with Brightway Markets, one of the largest retail chains in California. During this time, I've worked in various positions, starting as a regular sales associate and eventually becoming a senior operations lead. Currently, I am responsible for managing store number 137, our flagship location right in the heart of Sacramento. This store is not just a retail outlet, it's a small world with its own history, traditions, and a team that I've come to consider my second family. At Brightway Markets, store number 137 has always been exemplary, a place where newcomers come to learn and where best practices are developed before being implemented in other branches. Here, every employee knows that their contribution matters, and work is recognized based on merit. I started my career when my daughter was still in elementary school. Back then, working at Brightway Markets was not just a source of income, it was an opportunity to build my future, support my family, and put my ideas into practice. I remember how difficult those early years were. Learning, mastering my duties, and taking on more responsibility. But over time, my efforts began to pay off. One of my key achievements was reducing the store's shrinkage by nearly 18%. This was a significant success because previously, due to errors in inventory and theft, we were losing a considerable amount of merchandise. Together with my team, I reviewed the inventory system, introduced new control procedures, and conducted employee training. These changes helped not only save the company money but also improve overall operational efficiency. In addition, I was actively involved in staff training. Over the years, I have mentored and trained half of the current team, helping young professionals settle in and grow. I have always believed that a strong team is the foundation of a successful store. Thanks to this approach, we managed to maintain a stable and friendly workforce despite all the challenges and changes in the industry. My family has always been my support and strength. My daughter grew up seeing how hard and responsibly I approached my work. We often talked about what it means to achieve goals. It all started with a short message on my phone. It was from Derek Wilkins, our store's general manager. The text was brief and strange. Need you in the conference room, as soon as possible. No greeting, no explanation, no hint of why. Just those 4 words. I looked at the screen and felt something tighten in my stomach, a strange, painful feeling that was more than just anxiety. Over my 17 years at Brightway Markets, I had received plenty of similar messages, invitations to meetings, sometimes unexpected, sometimes urgent, but this time felt different. Something in the tone, the emotionless way it was written, the lack of the usual hello, all of it stirred unease inside me. I slowly opened the door to the conference room. Inside stood Derek Wilkins, our general manager, a young man just over 30, always reserved and a bit tense. Patricia from HR sat nearby, cold and formal as always. Between them on the table lay a folder that immediately caught my attention. "Have a seat, Lisa," Derek said without much warmth, not taking his eyes off the window. I obediently sat down, folding my hands in my lap, trying not to show how fast my heart was pounding. "We've conducted a review of the organizational structure," Derek began, his voice dry and businesslike, "and have concluded that your position no longer aligns with the company's current business needs." Patricia slowly slid the folder toward me. "Your salary is too high compared to your contribution," she continued, not looking up. I tried to process what I had just heard. Over my 17 years at Brightway Markets, I had poured my heart and soul into this company. I led my department, optimized processes, and implemented new systems that reduced losses by nearly 20%. My recent audits had been flawless, and my department consistently ranked in the top 5 in the region. Why was I being fired? "I don't understand," I said, my voice trembling but trying to keep calm. "My last performance review was excellent. Everything I've done has delivered results. Why am I being let go now?" Derek seemed to avoid meeting my eyes. "The decision was made at the executive level," he replied briefly. There was a nervousness in his voice, as if he wanted to get this conversation over with quickly. I knew he was a young manager brought in with the initiative to refresh the leadership team. Over the past 2 years, he had pushed out several long-time employee-experienced staff who, like me, had devoted years to the company. His style was harsh, cold, and unapologetic. Deep down, I felt the injustice, but I kept my composure on the outside. I smiled not out of weakness, but with confidence in myself and my truth. This was not the end, but the beginning of something new. They thought they were closing a door, but in reality, I was already standing at the threshold of new opportunities. Patricia handed me the paperwork to sign. "Thank you for your contributions, Lisa," she said, and I believed she meant it. I took the pen, signed the documents, and stood up calmly. Derek looked noticeably relieved, as if he expected me to cause a scene, and I didn't. I walked out of the room feeling that something greater awaited me ahead. After leaving the conference room, I paused in the hallway for a moment to collect my thoughts. Years spent at Brightway Markets, store number 137 in Sacramento, flashed through my mind like the pages of a book, each chapter filled with trials, worries, and small victories. I remembered the beginning of the pandemic, when everything around plunged into chaos. Supplies dwindled quickly, deliveries were delayed, and employees were afraid to come to work because of the virus. I took responsibility, rearranging shifts, organizing extra safety training, personally calling suppliers to ensure the arrival of critically needed products. It was tough, nerves were on edge, but the team held strong. We kept the store open, and despite everything, our service level didn't drop. Another vivid memory: the holiday seasons, when customer traffic doubled. It's hard to imagine how many hours we spent on our feet, solving issues with registers, out-of-stock items, and unhappy customers. Often, I stayed after hours to personally help cashiers or managers sort out inventory. Those days were exhausting, but when morning came after the Christmas sale and I saw my colleagues' smiles, I knew it was all worth it. Over the years, I nurtured a whole generation of young employees. I remember Jamie from electronics, who once timidly approached me with a question. Now he's one of the best managers, someone I'm proud of. I invested in everyone willing to learn, trying not only to explain technical details, but also to offer moral support and help them believe in themselves. But the contrast between me and Derek, my current manager, was too stark. While I was building a team and investing in people, I wanted to believe him. God, part of me still wanted to fix things. You don't just throw away 12 years. You don't just walk away from the person you built a life with. We had savings accounts together. A house, shared friends, tax returns. It's not that easy. So I said, fine, then end it. Today, cut her off, and be honest with me from now on. He nodded, said he would, swore it was over, that it didn't mean anything, that he wanted to work on our marriage. But after that, something in him changed, or maybe it had already changed, and I was only now seeing it clearly. He got colder, less present. He stopped pretending to try. He started working even later. No more good morning kisses, no more date nights, no more small talk. He was still there physically, but emotionally, he'd already left. I started to realize something. He didn't regret cheating. He regretted getting caught. So I decided to wait, to watch, to give him the rope and see if he'd hang himself with it. I didn't tell anyone yet. Not my mom, not my sister, not my best friend Chloe. I wasn't ready to face the judgment, the pity, the "I told you so's." Instead, I went quiet. But I was listening now, really listening. Watching. Collecting the truth he thought he was so good at hiding. Because if he thought I was going to let him destroy my life without consequences, he clearly forgot who he married. A few days after my dismissal, while I was still trying to make sense of what had happened, my phone suddenly vibrated a new email from Vanessa Torres, Vice President of Regional Operations at Haven Mart. The message was short but very important, an invitation to a meeting at the headquarters in San Francisco. I took a deep breath, my heart beating faster. This was completely unexpected. Vanessa wanted to discuss my future with the company. For all these years, I had worked at store number 137 in Sacramento, and although leaving the store seemed like the end, this email gave me hope. The next day, I got into my car and headed to San Francisco. The drive passed quickly. My mind raced as I tried to imagine what awaited me. At the Haven Mart headquarters, I was warmly welcomed. Vanessa, a woman with a confident and kind gaze, immediately made me feel at ease. With her was Jeremy Phillips, the chief operating officer, young but clearly experienced, who listened attentively to every word. "Lisa," Vanessa began, "we have been closely watching your work at store number 137. Your initiatives to optimize processes and train staff have made a strong impression on us." Jeremy added, "Especially important is how you managed to reduce staff turnover and build a team that works smoothly and effectively. That's a rarity in retail." I felt pride swelling inside me. Over the years, I had always tried to do my job conscientiously, and finally it was being noticed. Vanessa continued, "We are planning a restructuring of regional management and would like to offer you a new position, regional director overseeing 15 stores in Northern California, including your Sacramento store." I couldn't believe my ears. Excitement and surprise flashed in my eyes. "That's a great responsibility," I said, "but I'm ready to take on the challenge." They smiled, and Vanessa handed me a folder detailing the duties and terms of employment with a salary almost twice as high as my current one. At that moment, I realized this was not just a new job, it was recognition of my contribution and a chance to make things better. Returning to Sacramento, I stepped once again into store, where I had spent nearly 2 decades. Inside, I was filled with determination. My new position was close, but officially, I was still responsible for this store. I continued working as usual, meeting with department managers, handling inventory issues, supporting the team. This was my home, and I wasn't going to leave without finishing what I started. However, the atmosphere in the store had noticeably changed. Derek Wilkins, the general manager who had recently fired me, was now openly watching me with suspicion and even hostility. I caught his gaze several times as he scrutinized my reports and email correspondence. One day during lunch, Julia from accounting quietly said to me, "Lisa, Derek is literally hunting you now. He's reviewing every signature, every expense approval, trying to find something to accuse you of or discredit you." I sighed. This wasn't news to me. Derek had long been trying to push out all the experienced employees who might threaten his authority. In the past few months, several veterans had already been fired or forced out. Thomas from the warehouse, who had worked here for 22 years, was suddenly transferred to another department where his responsibilities were drastically reduced, and after a couple of weeks, he quit feeling unwanted. Catherine from customer support, who had devoted almost 30 years to the company, was put under a strict performance improvement plan. The demands were so impossible that after 3 months, she was forced to resign voluntarily. I realized that I was the last veteran still holding my position, and now Derek saw me as his primary target. His attempts to discredit me only strengthened my resolve. I knew that soon everything would change. The day of my dismissal arrived. I walked into the store with my usual calm, as if it were just another ordinary workday. When I was called into the conference room, I already knew what they were going to say. Yet still, when Derek and Patricia from HR handed me the folder with the documents, my heart clenched for a moment. I looked at the papers, everything official: termination due to misalignment with business needs and excessive salary. I smiled. Not because I was happy, on the contrary, it was a smile of inner triumph, the triumph of someone who knew the real victory was still ahead. Calmly signing the papers, I stood up and, before leaving the office, looked Derek in the eye. His face showed relief. He thought he had won. But I knew better. His role was about to change, and my future was something completely different. As I exited, colleagues greeted me. Some tried to hide their surprise and sympathy, others simply stayed silent. I knew many of them felt for me but were afraid to openly show support. In situations like this, it's important to keep your dignity and composure. Later that same day, after work, I received a call from Vanessa Torres, the Vice President of Regional Operations. "Lisa." Her voice was warm and confident. "We're ready to announce your appointment as Regional Director. This is the beginning of a new chapter." I called my daughter. "Mom, you did it!" she exclaimed joyfully. "I always knew you deserved more." Her words warmed me. At that moment, I realized that despite the injustice and difficulties, everything was falling into place as it should. Remembering Derek and his attempts to destroy what I had built over the years, I suddenly laughed. A laugh not at him, but at the whole situation. At a system that sometimes feels unfair but isn't eternal. At the fears and doubts we sometimes create ourselves. That laughter freed me. It transformed feelings of hurt and disappointment into strength and confidence. I decided I would. After everything that happened to me, I realized one very important thing. Life and work aren't just a set of circumstances beyond our control. It's how we respond to those circumstances, and the kind of person we choose to be despite everything. I was fired just one day before my retirement. It was a blow that could have broken anyone, but I decided not to let the situation define me. Instead, I took responsibility for my emotions, my future, and my dignity. She began by showing the judge the screenshots of Mark's text messages, the flirty, secret conversations with Maddie, the excuses he made, the lies he told me. Then came the emails and receipts that proved the hotel stays, the expensive dinners, the gifts that never made it home to me. But the real turning point was when Emily revealed the recordings from those backyard phone calls, where Mark discussed his plan to make me look unstable and keep everything he can. The courtroom went silent. Mark's face turned pale. His lawyer scrambled to object, but the evidence was overwhelming. Over the next few hours, witnesses were called friends who had noticed Mark's distant behavior, the neighbor who overheard his plans, even a therapist who confirmed Mark had tried to manipulate me by fabricating concerns about my mental health. The weight of it all was crushing. Mark's reputation began to unravel right before everyone's eyes. The man who once seemed so respectable was exposed as a liar and a manipulator. And then, the final blow, Maddie herself showed up unexpectedly, thanks to a subpoena from Emily. She didn't deny the affair. In fact, she looked uncomfortable and admitted she wanted nothing to do with the mess anymore. With his lies exposed and his allies turning away, Mark lost more than just the case. He lost his dignity, his friendships, and even Maddie, who walked out of the courtroom without a backward glance. The judge ruled in my favor, awarding me the house, a fair division of assets, and even alimony to help me rebuild my life. As I left the courthouse that day, I felt a mixture of relief and empowerment. The pain of betrayal still lingered, but so did a deep sense of victory. I had been broken, yes, but not defeated. I stood up, fought back, and reclaimed my life. And that, more than anything else, was the real triumph. Leaving the courthouse that day, I felt like I was stepping into a new chapter of my life, one I never imagined I'd get to write for myself. Divorce is never easy, but walking away with my dignity intact and, more importantly, with the resources I needed to start fresh, made all the pain worthwhile. With the house officially mine and a fair settlement secured, I didn't want to just sit back and recover. I wanted to rebuild. So I decided to take control not only of my finances, but of my future. I'd always loved baking, and during those long nights when everything felt overwhelming, I found comfort in the kitchen. So I enrolled in a small business course and started planning to open my own bakery right here in Austin. It felt scary, but exciting, like reclaiming a part of myself I'd forgotten. I also moved out of the neighborhood we once shared. That place held too many memories, some good but mostly painful reminders. I found a cozy apartment downtown, close to the city's vibrant energy and new opportunities. The freedom was intoxicating. I could make my own schedule, follow my own dreams, and most importantly, breathe without the weight of Mark's lies and schemes crushing me down. There were tough days, moments when loneliness crept in or when I questioned if I'd ever trust someone again. But each morning I reminded myself of the strength I'd discovered within. This journey taught me that no one else defines my worth. I'm more than a failed marriage or a betrayal. I'm a fighter, a survivor, and now an entrepreneur ready to write her own success story. Friends and family rallied around me, offering support and encouragement. I even reconnected with old hobbies, started yoga classes, and made new friends who shared my passion for growth and positivity. Looking back, I see the pain not as an end, but as a painful but necessary turning point. Mark's betrayal shattered the illusion of a perfect life, but it also pushed me to become a better version of myself, wiser, stronger, and more independent. Now, every time I open the door to my bakery, the smell of fresh bread and cinnamon reminds me of the hard road I traveled to get here and the bright future I'm building with my own two hands. If there's one thing I want anyone listening to know, it's this. No matter how dark the storm, the sun will rise again. And sometimes, you have to lose everything to find out just how powerful you really are. If there's one lesson I want you to take away from my story, it's this. Never underestimate the person you think you can break or use. Mark thought he had the upper hand. He believed I was weak, that I'd crumble under the weight of his lies and betrayal. But what he didn't realize was that true strength comes from calmness and clarity, not from anger or impulsive reactions. In those darkest moments, when my world was falling apart, I made a conscious choice. I chose to stay grounded, to think rationally, and to act strategically. That's what gave me the power to turn the tables. It's easy to let emotions take over, to scream, to lash out, to make decisions in the heat of the moment, but that rarely leads to victory. What leads to victory is patience, planning, and believing in yourself even when others doubt you. And here's something else I learned. Sometimes, the worst betrayals can be the beginning of your greatest transformation. When Mark cheated and tried to push me aside, I lost not just a husband, but also a life that no longer fit me. But in losing that life, I found myself. I discovered my own resilience, my own dreams, and my own voice. I built a new life, one that's mine, on my own terms. So, if you're watching this and going through something painful, a betrayal, a breakup, or any kind of heartbreak, remember this: it's not the end. It's the start of your comeback. Be calm, be strong, and don't let anyone else define your worth. You are more powerful than you think. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it inspires you to stand tall no matter what life throws at you. And remember, your best life is waiting on the other side of your struggles.